Hi everybody, Carl Valeri with the Stuck Mic AvCast. If you're wondering what you can do with your pilot certificate, look no further. Today we have with us the host of TJ Flying Adventures, who inspires many people to get out there and explore with their aircraft. You know, his videos are so inspirational and informational, and I think we should all follow his lead and make sure we have our own bucket list for our flying adventures. Hey TJ, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on.
Hi, Carl. Thanks for having me.
You know, before we get started, one of the things that I think is great about TJ is he's always supporting new pilots and moving forward with their flying. And another organization that's doing that is our sponsor, and that's actually the law offices of Robert M. Strumer, LLC. And they are giving away 100 scholarships guides so you can possibly get your ratings, private, instrument, commercial. Maybe you want to become a CFI. Maybe you just want to get your glider rating. Who knows? Either way, you can get one of those 100 scholarships guides by going out there and clicking on scholarships at Stuck Mic AvCast. The law offices of Robert M. Strumer, LLC handles various aviation matters, including FAA safety investigations and pilot medical certification. You can find them on the web at www.strumerlaw.com. And don't forget to use the coupon code StrumerLaw to get one of those free scholarships guides. Well, joining me today is from Southwest Florida is Leslie Colville. Leslie, hey, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Carl. Nice to be back on the podcast.
Yeah, it's actually been a lot of fun having Leslie on because she also is someone that's incredibly passionate about aviation. And I'm here in our Piper office in Lakeland, Florida. And as some of you know or might know, we are about to open up a new studio on the north side. It's over at Aero Center, and I'll have links actually in our contact page. Right on our contact page, you can see how you can come by and say hi to us. Make sure we are there, though, because most of the time we're doing this, either coaching, doing career coaching, or we're doing podcasting. But joining us today, which is really cool, we're here in Lakeland, in Leslie, Southwest Florida, is TJ from Spruce Creek Airport. So TJ, before we get started, tell us a little bit about the location of Spruce Creek for those of us that don't know where it is and what it is.
Sure. Spruce Creek is an amazing place that I've been living at for about a year. It is the largest air park in the world, and we have our own private runway. There are over 600 hangar homes and maybe 1,200 golf course homes. I'm lucky enough to be in one of the hangar homes, so I walk 15 feet out my back porch into the hangar, and then from the hangar, I taxi directly to the runway. And I can usually, from the time that I want to go somewhere, from the time I leave the back door, it's usually 15 minutes before I'm airborne.
Wow, that's everybody's dream, and you're living it. That's awesome.
Well, you know, the environment is really cool, but the thing that really makes this an amazing community is the people that live here. When you live with 1,000 other pilots that are your neighbors, you have a lot in common with your neighbors. And in 1 year, I've met over 100 of my neighbors, whereas everywhere else I've lived in my life, I've never known more than a handful of people in the community.
Wow. Aviation sure does bring people together, and that common interest is one that's very, very strong throughout the community in aviation. Hey, just wear a shirt that has an airplane on it, and you'll be talking for hours, right? Same thing in the community like aviation. It's hard to get out of the driveway, I'm sure. You want to just talk about airplanes.
Exactly.
Well, TJ, one of the things I have to say before we get started is I absolutely love what you've done in aviation. I've been, known you for years now, and have been watching your videos and seeing you at air shows and around. And you actually are one of those people in this world that lets your passion out and shows your passion for aviation, but you also do something else. You inspire other people to move forward and get out there and fly and maybe give them ideas about what to do in aviation. So hats off to you for that.
Thanks.
So your background, let's talk a little bit about that. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is we all come from different backgrounds as far as flying is concerned. So how did you get into this aviation world, and what inspired your actual passion for it?
Well, it's interesting. Nobody in my family is a pilot. I have no prior background or exposure to this other than it's something I've always wanted to do. And like many others, I wanted to do it my whole life. When I was in college, I didn't have the money to go through flight training. Later, when I had the money, I didn't have the time. And between work and life and family, there just never seemed to be a good time to pursue it. And then something happened on my 38th birthday. I woke up and I literally had an epiphany. And I thought to myself, if I'm ever going to do this, now is the time. I have to do it now. And so that day I went looking around for a CFI, and I found this kid who was 19 years old. And I say kid because on the one hand, he was 19, but on the other hand, he was a third generation pilot with 1,000 hours. And he had an enthusiasm and a flexibility that I absolutely needed. I took lessons from this kid early in the morning, sometimes 5 in the morning, sometimes 10 o'clock at night. Whenever my schedule permitted, he was available. And so with his help, I was able to get my private ticket at about 58 hours. And when I did, I was doing my training in Tampa, which is very hot. And it was the summer, which made it even worse. And I was literally dripping in sweat after every single flight lesson. And I would see these shiny, pretty Cirruses taxiing by that had their doors closed. And I couldn't believe they had their doors closed. And the CFI said to me, "Don't feel sorry for them. They have air conditioning. They're just fine." So because of that, that inspired me to go get my first airplane. And I purchased a brand new SR-20 from the factory. I went to go pick it up. It was my dream airplane. And then the insurance company burst my bubble. They said, "Oh, you're not qualified to fly that plane." So they made me stay there for a week to get a whole bunch of factory training and a sign off. And they made me take a CFI as a babysitter just to bring the plane home from Minnesota to Florida. At the time, I was not very happy about it, but in hindsight, thank God they did that, because I was so green and frankly ignorant. I didn't know all the things I didn't know. But since then, I've tried to make up for that, and I'm on my third Cirrus now, and I've flown in all 50 states, 14 countries, and 15 aircrafts types. I've had about 2,200 hours total, and I'm trying to fly around 300 hours a year. So that's kind of my general target.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. You know, I love what you said about babysitting, because if you think about it, like you said, there was a kid that started you off flying. And of course, those kids wind up babysitting us, who are a lot older if we're new in an aircraft. Going back to that, did you have any animosity or any feelings towards having somebody that seemed like they were just a quote unquote kid when being your flight instructor?
Absolutely not. And like some people, I think they get irritated and they have frustrating flight training experiences because, their instructor is clearly just trying to build hours to get to the airlines. I didn't really get upset by that because, everybody has a rationale for being in the career that they're in. What I cared about more was just his enthusiasm. He clearly loved aviation, and it just came out of him as, we're sitting here, he's teaching me some maneuver. I'm probably screwing up the maneuver. And he's, very calm and patient, and showed me, he was happy to demonstrate something before letting me try it again. That's what really mattered to me. So I definitely had no animosity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how many people are out there that are very young, and they're out there just starting out flight instructors, but they're so, enthusiastic that they inspire us. They may not have all the experience as somebody with some gray hair, but you know what? Half the battle is just trying to inspire your student, and patience is the other one. Sounds like he had a lot of patience. Absolutely.
Definitely.
And Leslie can attest to that, because, Leslie, you've had quite a few very young flight instructors that have worked at your schools.
Definitely, Carl. And, I tell people, I had a lot of hesitation from some of our older students back at our two previous flight schools. And they said, well, I don't know about, flying with this 19, 20, 21-year-old kid. I'm 60, 65 years old. Or I don't want a brand new flight instructor with no experience, no matter what age they are. And I was telling them, there are some disadvantages and advantages to either way that you look at it. But one of those advantages is these inexperienced flight instructors, they're brand new to the industry and teaching, that they, they're fresh out of school. That all of that knowledge is top of mind. Their skills are sharp. Maybe they might be lacking on some of the soft skills that they're going to grow and develop as they gain some experience. But you can be guaranteed that you're going to get some really good instruction, for the most part.
Absolutely. And remember, we can learn from everybody. And that person has just came out of flight training, like you said. That's terrific. TJ, I tell you, this person inspired you in aviation, and you've inspired a lot of people out there in the whole world of aviation, because you're very much involved in some other things, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But this aviation world impacts us, everybody, in different ways. In what way has it impacted your life?
Wow. In a word, dramatically. The entire process of learning to fly changed my outlook both in life and in business. And in life, I kind of felt like, suddenly, it may sound cocky, but I felt like anytime I was faced with a challenge, I felt like, hey, I can land a plane. How hard can this other thing be? And that sounds kind of silly, but it almost was like a change in my attitude about the discipline and the determination to pursue something. And that's the one thing that I think really stuck out to me, is that in aviation, there's no cookie cutter curriculum that everybody follows. People go at their own pace. Some people go to a school and crank out all their ratings in a couple of months. Other people, they do it part-time while they're working, while they're busy with other stuff, and it might take them 6 months or a year. Everybody has their own path here. But for me personally, just the way the process played out changed my attitude, and it gave me just confidence and determination to do so many other things.
And how's it affected, possibly, I think you're retired, but how about in your career life? What have you taken from aviation that you can use in your career?
Well, I'm a retired IT exec, and in IT, we constantly work on these projects, and the projects have a culmination called a go live. And every single project that I've ever been on in my entire career starts out the same. Starts out very smooth, simple, organized. Then defects start to happen when you're testing the system. Then surprises come up with the client changing business requirements. Something happens that adds complexity more and more as you get close to that finish line of going live with the system. And for me, when I started learning to fly, I kind of felt like, it's just like being in the cockpit. You're going along with a really simple flight path. You're going to go from point A to point B. I'm going to follow this route that I planned out on ForeFlight, and it's so scenic because it takes me near this nice little skyline and this other point of interest. And then ATC gives you a surprise. And then the surprise they gives you points you towards some weather, and that gives you another complexity. And then because of that weather, you do some other diversion, and then all of a sudden there's some other traffic. And so now you're dealing with all these different things, and you're dealing with it both with your eyes, with your ears, with your hands and your feet. You're using every tool at your disposal. And while you're going along, you have to always sort of realize that this isn't fatal. Whatever just happened is unlikely to be really fatal at the moment. And you have to concentrate on triaging the situation and figuring out the next best action. And when I applied that principle to my work life, that was actually an inflection point in my career. When I started learning to fly, that's when my career took off. And I'm, happy to say that I'm kind of retired at a fairly young age, and now I can spend more time flying.
And we can't wait to see some of that flying you're doing on your videos, that's for sure. And that actually, what you just said was really important. I tell people when they're thinking about getting into aviation, how it affected my life. It affected my life dramatically. And many people similarly. I mean, it really helps you outside the world of aviation. So there's so much that we can use that's in the aviation world that we can use outside, in relationships, in work, and everything in your life. It truly teaches you how to become successful at something. But outside of that, we find that one of the things we'd love to do is continue flying with an aircraft. Well, and buying an aircraft, you did that. You got your rating, and you are living the dream. I can't keep up, actually, what airplane you have right now. So maybe you could tell us what your current aircraft is. Sure. I think I may have seen it. I think it may have been blue. And also, what are you doing with that airplane? What's your mission?
Yeah. So I'm still a big Cirrus fan. So I'm on my third one. This is the one I'm currently flying is a 2017 SR22 Turbo. That is their Generation 6 model. Cirrus just recently released their Generation 7, which is even more amazing. But the one I'm flying is a G6. And I use that plane probably the way that I say it's truly intended to be, meaning this plane is the perfect cross-country plane to go explore new places. And I'm certainly doing that. I've gone to a whole bunch of new countries with it, and that's one thing that's added a really unique challenge to my flying and has given me a lot of experience as we go. In addition to that, I also, a lot of people criticize Cirrus pilots for being too much of button pushers. I try to make sure that I'm not just a button pusher. And so I do formation flying with it. I do a lot of hand flying with the Cirrus. And even though the Cirrus is a very technically advanced aircraft with lots of buttons to press, it also flies just perfectly well without the autopilot. And so I make it a point to make sure that I'm current in doing that. Aside from my own plane, I also try to fly different kinds of aircraft each year. And so just recently I took some training in a tailwheel training in a Piper Cub. That was a first for me, a plane that had no gadgetry, no buttons, literally look out the window. Then last weekend, I actually was fortunate enough to go through Patty Wagstaff's aerobatic school. And that was an absolutely wild experience, flying a Super Decathlon and an Extra 300. These planes can do things that I didn't even think were possible with an airplane. And the process of learning how to do that was just fascinating.
So that's actually, kind of going back to this whole thing with the Cirrus pilots just being button pushers. I think that's great that you've done that. And I would take, you as an example. Get out there and go fly, do other things, stretch your aviation knowledge and hand fly that Cirrus. I think that's terrific that you do that. One of the things that I think is really cool is the fact that you've never stopped. I know you've retired at a fairly young age and I love your adventures, but you never stop trying to expand yourself. And that's what's really cool about aviation, I think, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, is it's almost never ending. I mean, you can go out and try something different in aviation just about every year, right?
Yeah, absolutely, because aviation is truly infinite. You can sit there and work up the ranks of equipment, as you've done, working up to an Airbus. I don't think I have any aspiration to fly an Airbus, but I would certainly like to fly other aircraft that are bigger, faster, and more complex than the Cirrus. I certainly aspire to do that. But more important than the actual aircraft is the type of flying. Because recently I did a trip to New Zealand where I did some mountain flying in the Southern Alps. And this was truly the Wild West for me. I went there as prepared as I could possibly be. I had practiced in the sim. I had flown with a local flight instructor and did a bunch of grass landings because I knew I'd be flying off airport. And then when I got there, the instructor that took me up for the first time, I wanted to show off how prepared I was. So I had memorized the charts and I was like all ready. We were leaving Queenstown, New Zealand, heading north. And I asked him, hey, show me on the map where we're going, which airport. And I've probably flown there in the sim. And I was all proud of myself. And then he said, yeah, you can put the map away. We're not going to need that. I'm like, what do you mean? You have to have the map. Where are we going to go? He's like, well, we're going to go that way. We're going to turn right up the third mountain ridge, and then we're going to look for a sheep farm, and we're going to land there. And that's not on the map.
That's kind of stretch your boundaries there. That's really cool. What a story that is. And New Zealand, of all places. What's it like? What's it look like in New Zealand as far as flying is concerned?
It is amazing. It is mountain flying at its extreme. Extreme because you have 10,000 foot peaks 15 miles away from sea level. You have these giant peaks that climb out of the sea, essentially. And it's literally the scenery that was in the Lord of the Rings. So it is otherworldly. It literally feels like you're on another planet.
So when you're doing these things, when you're going out and experiencing this, do you record this and do you put that out on YouTube? And by the way, you got to tell us about your YouTube channel.
Yeah, I actually do. So I've got a bunch of videos about the New Zealand trip and many of the other trips. Last summer, I flew to the northern tip of Canada by Hudson Bay to what they call the polar bear capital of the world. And that was another kind of extreme trip. All of these kind of trips, I have video cameras strapped inside and outside the plane, and I try to stitch it together into a fun, interesting, meaningful short clip.
Yeah, they're really cool, Leslie. I tell you, I'm sure you've watched his channel. Isn't he really? Aren't those videos cool? And he's so inspiring.
Yes, and I just love all of the different adventures. And as I was exploring your website, TJ, I just love the aviation bucket list, and then like your top 10 scenic flights that you've had. And it inspired me to kind of reevaluate my aviation bucket list. I mean, for example, one that comes to mind is flying in every class Bravo in America. I think that how unique that is. It's not really unique, but that's a different way of thinking. I thought, I think I want to do that too someday. And, one of the videos, John and I were watching some of your videos last night, and we happened to see one where you're flying in Hawaii, and people are going to get tired of me asking questions about Hawaii, but it's just so amazing. In fact, we've got a little bit of time in one of the same Cirrus aircraft with Lawrence of Maui Flight Academy. And I actually saw our hangar in one of your videos and got to meet you on the ramp, you and your wife, a couple of years ago. What I loved about that video, though, is how you took the back seat and let your wife take the controls. And she had her first time of flying a Cirrus and landing the plane, and she did an amazing job with Lawrence's help. And I just loved how you were just in the back seat, just giddy, applauding her, encouraging her, and her face of amazement as she rotated and she took off the runway over that shoreline off of runway 2 in Maui. So hats off to you for sharing those experiences with your family members.
My favorite part about that video, I don't know if you caught it, there was a point in the flight where Lisa realized that the autopilot was not on, and she kind of got scared. And, she told Lawrence, "Oh my God, the autopilot's not on." And he's like, "That's okay. It hasn't been on the whole flight. You've been flying the plane."
Wow,
That's amazing.
That's really cool, Leslie. I tell you, I just, when I saw that video too, and that was kind of like a point where, aha, I'm doing this, and that was like so inspirational. I actually tell people about that. Actually, I'm kind of glad you keyed in on that one. That's like one of my favorite videos you've done, TJ.
Well, TJ,
really
one of
is.
your
I may have another one. She did it. She also flew in New Zealand, so she has taken off and landed in 2 different countries now.
Well, I know one of your bucket list items is to become a flight instructor, and I tell you, as a flight instructor, that aha moment that Carl was talking about. Those are the days when you look over and you think, okay, man, this is why I'm doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's inevitable. I've been thinking about it for a long time. And with the aerobatics school, part of that training, I got my CFI spin endorsement. So everybody tells me that's one of the hardest elements of the CFI training. And so I feel like I got the hardest part done first. And now I just got to go read up on everything else.
Well, TJ, I tell you, if I see all these things that you have on your bucket list, and it's fun to watch. Other than getting your CFI, what else? What is next on your whole adventure?
Well, for this year, one of the things I want to do, I love flying to new areas because a lot of people, they fly the same plane back and forth to the same restaurants for lunch, and then they do that 100 times. I don't want to do the same thing 100 times. I want to go explore new places. So this year I plan to fly to 6 new countries. And in addition to, I've already flown in 3 new aircraft types this year. I'm looking to fly in 3 additional new aircraft types this year. That is from an actual flying aspiration, what I plan to do this year. As Leslie alluded to, CFI is something that I think this is the year. I think the stars and moons have aligned, and I think this is the year I'm going to do it.
That's awesome. Hey, and I wanted to ask you along those lines, when you are teaching one day, so these videos that you're posting are just these amazing adventures, and part of the adventure is a lot of the weather conditions, and I have to say sometimes sketchy weather conditions that you're flying in. So, obviously you're an experienced pilot and you're in a very capable aircraft. How are you going to handle when, your students or, younger, more inexperienced pilots are watching your videos and they think, hey, that doesn't look too hard. I think I'm going to go out and do that. So what's that precautionary tale that you want to tell them?
Yeah.
How did you build up your experience to where you can fly at that level?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't take this lightly at all. And I often, some of my weather flying videos, I get comments like, oh, you shouldn't have been up there. And, you're setting a bad example. Why are you flying in there? And why are you taking video of it? I actually think it's important to do that because, some of the videos are just scenic, feel-good videos. Hey, we flew to this cool new place. But a lot of the videos are, here's real world what happened. One of my videos, I took off in clear VFR for a 20 nautical mile flight and then encountered a snow squall. It was an absolute freak, unexpected thing, and I got caught in it. And I literally had to go from VFR to IFR while on final. And that's the kind of stuff I think it's valuable for people to see. I certainly never encourage people to go out looking for bad weather or go fly, kind of in over their heads. I definitely never do that. And the other thing that I do is I try to emphasize that every time I do fly in weather, I do a pretty detailed weather briefing in advance. I take all kinds of precaution. I make sure the TKS fluid is full in the plane. I make sure that when there's an option of going around something or delaying the takeoff for an hour or two, those are easy things to do to mitigate risk. And I definitely encourage that.
Yeah, and that's what I love in those videos, how number one, you don't panic. Your training kicks in gear. You take a deep breath and you say, okay, what are my options today? You're working with ATC. You're working with the capabilities of your aircraft. Your planning is coming into play. So I do like that aspect about that. So hats off to you.
Thanks. And the other thing, a lot of my flights are single pilot IFR. And when you're single pilot IFR, ATC is your best friend. And I go out of my way to take advantage of any advice or help that ATC can give me along the way.
Absolutely. Hey, TJ, can I add 2 things to your bucket list? And
Sure.
It's a bit of a challenge here. Number one, I want you to fly into our new studio. We actually have a brand new studio in Lakeland, Florida, on the north side of the airport. It's our first time announcing it, so I'd love to have you come by, and we'll maybe shoot a video there, maybe go do some flying. I'll take you to, there's a really cool restaurant there, Waco Kitchen, which we have already been to, and give you a quick tour of the whole airport there. I'd love to see that. Also, another thing, and I'll challenge you, and it's always good to do these things in public because sometimes we won't do this, but I'd love to take you up in the Airbus. And as you know, I'm an instructor in the simulator, and the simulator is located right there in Orlando. So if you want to fly into Orlando, I promise you, I'll take you up in the Airbus, and we'll shoot some video with it.
I love both of those ideas, and I will take you up on both of them.
So as long as you're okay with pushing buttons and flying with a side stick, I think you'll be okay in the Airbus.
I've pushed a few buttons in my day.
Absolutely. So TJ, I know you've been really inspiring a lot of folks, and going forward, we always ask our guests, is there anything that you have, because you've done such a great job, any services, any products that you're actually trying to promote, or maybe somebody you're trying to promote?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not really selling any products or services at this time. Once I get my CFI, I'll certainly be doing some instruction, but I'm not going to be doing like what I'll call typical instruction. I'm going to be doing instruction that's sort of inspired adventure related instruction. So for example, I might do something like an IFR adventure where, I'll take a private pilot and take him on a 5-day trip and go through some scenic area and then train him on instruments along the way with the intention of by the end of the 5 days, you will be ready for your check ride, something like that. I'll do some, very unique type of training. But for now, all I'm doing is just enjoying life and kind of chronicling my adventures, and we'll see where that leads.
Yeah, and that's going to be terrific to follow you, of course, here, at Stuck Mike AvCast, learn to fly, living to fly, and loving to fly, and you aspire to all those things, and you really represent that, and that's why we love having you on. We'd love to have you come back again. Well, let's make sure they can find you on the internet, and that's at, what's the website again?
It's very simple, TJ Flying Adventures. There's a website directly you can go there, or on YouTube, just at TJ Flying Adventures. That's the easiest way to find me.
Absolutely. We'll have a link in the show notes or in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. By the way, most people are listening to us. We have started up the YouTube channel again, so click on that. Stock Mike AvCast, go out to YouTube, check it out. Also check out TJ's Flying Adventures. I am really excited about the next adventures and the fact that you are trying these new things, and I'm going to continue to follow you, and I'm sure most of our audience will also. TJ, thanks so much for coming here today and inspiring people to move forward in their flying life.
My pleasure. Looking forward to seeing you guys at Sun of Fun.
Speaking of which, Sun and Fun, we're going to be there. The crew for Stuck Mike AvCast, we're volunteering at Sun and Fun Radio. Of course, our sister podcast, Aviation Careers Podcast, we have a booth, and that's actually an A41 in the A hangar. We're going to be right next to Piedmont Airlines. Also, some of the folks from Stuck Mike AvCast will be at that booth. If you want to get your photo with somebody from Stuck Mike AvCast, go to that booth, and we're going to try to bring people in and get photos. We'll get one with TJ, of course, and that's going to be a lot of fun. After that, the Florida Air Show is coming up. In Florida International Air Show. Don't know the specific dates, but they're coming up soon. Check out their website, floridaairshow.com. We'll be doing that again this year, too. And if you're somebody who's been inspired by TJ, but you maybe don't have the money to actually pay for some of the flight training, we actually have a solution for you, and that's the Scholarships Guide. That's published by Aviation Careers Podcast. You can click on the Scholarships Guide on the right side of the screen. And you know, the sponsor of this podcast, Strumer Law, they actually are giving away 100 of those scholarships guides by using the coupon code Strumer Law. The law offices of Robert M. Strumer, LLC handles various aviation matters, including FAA safety investigations and pilot medical certification. You can find them on the web at www.strumerlaw.com and use that coupon code Strumer Law and get the free scholarships guide. Oh, folks, I really appreciate your listening. And just like TJ says, get out there and fly. Do something today to move forward in your flying life. It could just be, watching a video, listening to TJ on this podcast, or watching one of his YouTube videos. But I really, really encourage you, if you can't fly, get on a simulator, but try to do something today to move forward in your flying life. We'll talk to you next episode. Safe flying out there.